This is the perfect wife for a man. She is white, beautiful, long-legged and wears exquisite makeup. She does everything her husband tells her to do. She can even be used as a cash machine. The mouth is the money spout. And all this action only requires a small remote control. Joanna was an elite businesswoman. For various reasons, refusing to subterfuge, she was fired. Although that day he left a very decent, but he returned home because he could not bear the shock into a deep depression. Husband Walter, in order to restore Joanna's confidence in life, take her and the 2 children, moved to a small town called Stepford to start a new life. The landlady received them very warmly. A dress, she stepped on the high heels and delicate makeup, a stark contrast to the disheveled Joanna. The house is bright and spacious. Not only is the whole house intelligent and equipped with a robot dog, this makes the family very happy. A few days later the landlady drove Joanna to introduce the town. With 200 years of history, there is no overcrowding and no crime. It is a very happy place to live. The large cottage you see is the men's club in town, and the club for women is here. The landlady warmly introduces the new arrival Joanna. Morning Joanna. Such uniformity of dress and voice. Joanna felt very strange but could not find the reason. The landlady told her this is what a wife should do. Then she gave Joanna a welcome dance. A few days later, on the 4th of July, the town threw a big picnic party. Joanna in a black dress. In the crowd of floral dresses of the wife looks very out of place. But the presence of a couple soon relaxed her. They were Bobby, a writer's wife, and her husband, Bob. Bobby was dressed in casual clothes and her husband had also recently moved in. 2 women who have heard a lot about each other. They soon became acquainted. They also met Roger, an architect, and his boyfriend, who were also new to the area. As the music started, the crowd began to dance to their heart's content. At this point a woman's behavior became very strange. She kept spinning like a stuck machine, and repeated the same words over and over again, then fell straight down. Unlike the others, who watched indifferently, Joanna quickly came to her side to try to give her first aid. Just then a man named Mike came out of the crowd. It was clear from the way the others looked at him that he had absolute authority here. Mike told Joanna to get up at the same time. The other men also tacitly squeezed her to the back of the crowd. Unknown to Joanna bent down to see what was going on. The next second the strange woman really miraculously recovered. This woman is walking down the stairs, but as the remote control is activated, she suddenly stops moving. And the 3 people who were playing with the remote control, not aware of this strange sight behind them. Just the day before, the housewife, Sarah, had fallen at the ball. Mike just twisted her neck. She made a miraculous recovery. The townspeople continued to sing and dance as if nothing had happened. Mike was the landlady's husband, insisted on not taking Sarah to the hospital, claiming that she had just fainted from a seizure and was not seriously injured. When she got home, Joanna couldn't figure out why people were doing this, and she saw sparks coming out of Sarah's body. It didn't look like a seizure. Why did everyone listen to Mike and not take Sarah to the hospital? Walter insisted that Joanna must have been mistaken. After all, her depression has just gotten better and it's normal to be paranoid. The 2 of them disagree. When her husband was about to leave the house, Joanna, who knew how much her husband cared for her, had no choice but to compromise. Maybe she was just being paranoid. The couple made up. The next day Joanna changed out of her tough girl black dress. Instead, she was dressed as a pink housewife. In the face of Roger and Bobby's incredulous eyes, Joanna said her husband's performance last night is very different from the past. Maybe she can also try to change a little. Talking about Sarah's situation, the 3 decided to visit her at his home. They walked in through the unlocked door, but as soon as they entered the house, they heard the couple in the bedroom upstairs. The husband and wife were playing an intense chorus. Embarrassed, they found a charming remote control on the floor. It was engraved with Sarah's name. While they were tinkering with the remote control, Sarah was descending the stairs, the body also with the remote control button to stop or fall backwards until the fall. The 3 who fled naturally did not see this strange scene. Meanwhile, Walter at the men's club was having a good time after the game. Walter talked about how much he liked the town. In particular, the town's wives were perfect. The men complimented him on this. Seems to have been expected. Mike also told Walter, these wives are not only in the life of the all-round, they also had special skills that no one expected. Then a demonstration was made. Saw a man's wife took his bank card. After shoving it in his mouth, The body actually sounded the sound of counting money and then spit out the money from the mouth. This fancy operation let Walter directly look dumbfounded. Unlike Walter in the men's club, like a fish in water, Joanna was on pins and needles in the ladies' club. Except for Roger and Bobby, everyone had a similar dress code. 8 teeth showing and a programmed smile on their faces. The landlady's casual remarks had them all clapping like stars. Joanna was so embarrassed that she was about to be deducted from the 3-room apartment. Next to Bobby was speechless, because in the chat, these perfect wives are completely unable to keep up with her big brain, and their new neighbors seem to be on the same page. Back home, Walter did not tell his wife Joanna that the perfect wives were actually robots. Instead, he drove to the club again at nightfall. Together with Roger Bob, he joins the club under the auspices of Mike, to find out what her husband is doing at the club every day. Bobby and Joanna sneaked in through the window in the dark. What they saw was an oil painting of each family. Everyone on them has a programmed smile, but there is no warmth in the eyes. At that moment someone came up. Luckily it was Roger. Under his cover the two did not escape from the other men, but Roger was led by Mike to see a scene that sent chills down his back. This town is so strange. The housewives in it all look the same. It's like a product made on the same assembly line. Men who are obviously effeminate can also be full of manhood overnight and can stand on the podium to run for government. Joanna and Bobby on stage were stunned. Their good friend Roger was a funny, hip, and toxic man. How could he lose those big clothes he treasures to put on a serious suit and cold to them? Joanna decides to move out of the house when all sorts of weird things happen. Walter, her husband, saw it and said it was not working. Can only promise her to move tomorrow. But in the middle of the night, the robot dog delivered a remote control. It was engraved with Joanna's name. She started checking the news about the town overnight. Found that the women who live here were once outstanding talents in various industries. Since moving here, they have all become perfect housewives. Even the family's robot dog had won various competitions. Early the next morning, Joanna rushed into Bobby's house to tell her the truth. Who knows that her originally messy home suddenly cleaned up? Joanna felt a sense of foreboding. It was true that Bobby, who was always unkempt, had changed dramatically, like the perfect wife in a little dress, wearing delicate makeup and a change of blonde curls. Joanna wanted to find out what was happening to her, but Bobby was getting closer to Joanna, brainwashing also into her. So, while talking, Bobby's hand on the fire and she did not respond. It dawned on Joanna, these so-called perfect wives are not normal human beings at all. She ran away. She didn't dare to stay any longer. Joanna calls the children's summer camp to escape the town with the children, only to be told that her husband Walter had already picked up the kids. For the sake of the 2 children, she immediately drove to the men's club. Suddenly found the portrait of her family of 4 also appeared here. The painting of her wearing a blonde curly hair looked Joanna creepy. The men were dressed in uniform. They surrounded her with expressionless faces. Walter also came to her side and began to accuse Joanna. As a man, he was fed up with Joanna being better than him in everything. Walter's self-esteem was shattered by his $1 million annual salary. He saw himself as a husband who was just a bag carrier for her. The men in the room began to respond. They didn't want a strong wife but a perfect housewife. Joanna asks her husband if he's going to kill himself because of this. Mike then told her the truth about the town. It turns out that Stepford town is an experimental base. There is a fully automated female transformation system. Only need to implant a special chip in the women's brains into the designed program. They can turn them into obedient robots. After watching the video, Joanna just think this design is ridiculous. Although these perfect wives could say I love you in 58 languages, but wholeheartedly. As we speak, a high platform slowly rises from the bottom of the foot. On top of it lies a robotic replacement that looks exactly like Joanna. Joanna threw herself at her husband and kissed him to wake him up, but Walter did not intend to stop moving. In Joanna's tears, the two descend together with the robot. The scene shifts to Joanna has been successfully transformed. At this point, she and the portrait of the person exactly the same. By now, all the women in the town of Stepford had been transformed. A big welcome party is held for the two. While everyone was out on the dance floor, Walter sneaks into the underground laboratory. Already a member, he was free to come and go. Since he did not know how to disarm the chip in his wife's brain, he could only press the device. Accidentally triggered the initialization of the program. The chips in the wives' brains were instantly deactivated. They all regained consciousness. They all pushed on their husbands. The remote control also did not work. The men were all terrified and called out to Mike for help. Walter came out when everyone was at a loss. Joanna also took off her robot-like disguise. The original parting kiss. Sure enough, Walter's love for her awakened. In his view, what he had fallen in love with was a living person and not a cold machine. Naturally, she has her joys, sorrows and imperfections. Feeling offended, Mike turned around and grabbed the candlestick and was about to hit Walter, but Joanna was quick to smash it down. The result: it turns out that Mike is also a robot. Everyone was dumbfounded, and the whole thing is the mastermind is the landlady. She was the world's best brain surgeon. After finding out that her husband Mike was hanging out with his best assistant, her worldview is completely collapsed. Determined to create a perfect world, so she created the perfect robot husband and every perfect wife. After saying that she could not help but kiss her husband, who had become a pile of parts and finally died of electrocution. 6 months later, Joanna made a documentary about this bizarre experience. Once broke the highest TV ratings. Bobby also wrote a novel about his own experience that sold worldwide, and Roger really became the Congressman of the Week. As for those who are only interested in making the perfect wife, but never in their own problems, men are under house arrest in the small town of Stave, under the absolute sovereignty of their wives, taking care of all the household chores. The movie, The Stepford Wives, was released in 2004. It is a moderate popcorn comedy film. It was also once known by fans as Nicole Kidman, one of the 2 worst films. Many times, in our special, like another person is blind to each other's flaws, and these flaws are often waiting for love to fade to the surface. We are just ordinary mortals who have their own imperfections, but each person is unique. Live your own life is the most important. Well, that's it for today's video. Let's see you next time.